Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and sometimes you see things that are just so over the top that you can't help but want to address them. And in the last couple of days, the new fact-checking team, they're fact-checking. I can't wait for them to fact-check away. Fact, check. They're coming. I just want you to read this. Bill Gates said healthcare and vaccines could reduce unsustainable population growth in a 2010 TED Talk, fact checkers say. So they admit it. It's right there. What he says is unsustainable population growth. Now, this Malthusian school of thought of unsustainable population growth has been around, well, since we had empires. I illustrate this in the film we're going to show you right now. Webster Tarpley actually talks about overpopulation in Roman times. And it is a false ideology. Even somebody like Ray Kurzweil, who's a futurist, transhumanist, brought into Google for a subdivision called Calico to try to get people to live forever. Even he'll tell you that people are crowded amongst one another, there's plenty of land, and overpopulation is not really a thing. But all these people want you to believe it because it's what's going to move what we're dealing with now with COVID-19 into the climate change realm and their total cashless society control grid of oppression. Okay, that's what they want in their transhumanist movement. This is a reality. And it's something I've been talking about for well over a decade. And Bill Gates has been a focal point of this because he's kind of openly talked about it. He said things that, maybe I shouldn't have said. You know, just like recently when speaking about Epstein, remember we had to cover that? And he said, well, if there's anything to learn from it, it's that you have to be careful. He's dead. And he kind of cackled about it. Think about that. Think about how mind-blowing that is. Somebody who had business relationships with this man, even though he denies that those business relationships went anywhere. They're on global health, the same kind of, unsustainable population growth health he's talking about over a decade ago. So when you talk about this, I mean, the fact checkers just try to put it in a light that it's okay now, or it just doesn't exist, or straw man arguments. It's kind of mind blowing. So we're going to play this subsection of Shade the Motion Picture after I play a couple of clips of Gates really showing his fangs while people aren't paying attention and not understanding what's really going on. So I want people to thumbs it up, subscribe, and share. We could be kicked off of YouTube at any time. It's happened again and again and again and again. These strikes are arbitrary. They're constantly changing their rules. And even in their rules, they say there will be selective enforcements. So, again, I just want to reiterate everything that I'm about to show you has been on this platform before. I'm not going to say one thing or another about certain things we're not allowed to talk about on this channel. We've got to be very, very careful, or the fact checkers come in, and the Ministry of Truth is a real thing at this point. That's why I need your support now, also, more than ever. And if you want to support me, the GoFundMe link down below, or join Rockfin. If you are on Rockfin, you have the premium membership, we've got over 12 years ago explaining how we're all now domestic terrorists. That was the play over a decade ago. That was the play with the Patriot Act. All right? That is all there. So that's premium. That's over an hour long. We talk about it at length. And now you're seeing that come to fruition like so many other things. Like if you watch some of the free videos that are throwbacks in there that I've discussed, you'll see that this swine flu that they tried to put out was the first time they fished out multiple shots, 2 or 3. And now it's not 2 or 3. It's actually 3 or 5. Or we'll revoke your status. That's already happening globally. And Gates himself announced that. He talked about that before they started rolling it out as a good thing. I want to thank Odyssey for backing up my YouTube channel. And all my documentary films, including the one we're going to sample here today, Shade the Motion Picture, are free in the playlist section. In fact, if you're watching on Rockfin, it's in the comment section at the top, full length to the video. I also want to remind people this Sunday, did I say Sunday? Come on down to the Quad Cities. Have a burger on me. Apparently there's going to be protesters. That's going to be great. I hope to talk to them. I hope to have them come in and really see what we're all about. I'm not about right or left. I'm always about right and wrong. I don't support a political party. I call it like I see it. And that's really what we're going to be doing. We're going to be talking about solutions to the problems at hand for many of us, no matter how we vote. And people have to realize the predator class we're about to expose, that Mr. Gates and his neighborhood of make-believe, that's who they are. They're a neighborhood of make-believe. They're the men behind the curtain, and women. It's not just a exclusive. I wouldn't want anybody to think I'm sexist. That's for sure, because that's not how it rolls. Another thing, I'm equal opportunity. I'll tell you, it doesn't matter what sex you are. You can be equally as vicious, equally as sadistic, equally as sociopathic. So activationtour.org, you can find out all about the other activations, but come on down to the Quad City. Let's have an awesome event. That's what we need. That's what we want. Very excited about that. So, first things first. Let's dispel the myth this hasn't been super profitable for Bill Gates. Okay? It's been his best investment. And part of that is the shots and the boops, but really it's these tax-free foundations. And then them being able to manipulate and use the stock market to make even more money that's tax-free. Okay, and he's going to let you know right here. Now, it's going to be like a minute-plus clip because there's going to be a lot of filler. There always is. There always is to contrive the issue. But the issue is that he, at the bottom line, says, this is about the most profitable thing you can do. And right in that little key point, it says, co-founder and philanthropist. Oh, they're philanthropists. Oh, the philanthropists. Please.
About what he's been working on. And Mr. Gates, thank you so much for being with us. I'd like to talk to you about your approach to vaccinations. You wrote something recently, and like you always do, you kind of looked at the problem from a scientific and business perspective on things. You've invested $10 billion in vaccinations over the last 2 decades, and you figured out the return on investment for that, and it kind of stunned me. Can you walk us through the math?
Well, it's pretty impressive that when you take these vaccines, get them to be very inexpensive by making big volume commitments, have that right relationship with the private sector, get the delivery system so they're really getting the coverage out there, you literally save millions of lives. And 20 years ago, when we created these new multilateral organizations, Gavi for the vaccines, Global Fund for HIV, TB and malaria, we didn't know they'd be successful. They've gone through lots of challenges about making sure the money gets there, making sure the efficiency is right. But as we look at upcoming replenishments for those, and we've got so much distraction politically that the international needs like this could get eclipsed if we're not careful. We see a phenomenal track record. It's been $100 billion overall that the world's put in. Our foundation is a bit more than $10 billion, but we feel there's been over a 20-to-1 return. So if you just look at the economic benefits, that's a pretty strong number compared to anything else.
And you notice that was the biggest smile when he said that. Now, what else I want to point out is that Gates is making a lot of other people rich. You notice he said $100 billion went in, $10 billion from us. Do you think those people that are pledging that other $90 billion aren't part of that same land of make-believe gang, the good guys club that we're going to learn about? Of course they are. And they're making hand over fist. Look how giddy he is when he says it. And this is the same guy that, again, we're going to show you in the video talking about population control. But remember, all this, and he's openly talking about death panels back in the day. Oh, you're not supposed to say that out loud, but he's going to say it out loud.
The middle class or whatever is just rapidly going away. That's a trade-off society is making because of very, very high medical costs and a lack of willingness to say, is spending $1 million on that last 3 months of life for that patient, would it be better not to lay off those 10 teachers and to make that trade-off in medical costs? But that's called the death panel, and you're not supposed to have that discussion. So you, of course,
Well,
we're
that's
making...
an interesting thing you just said, which is just the last 3 months in life for one person or something, because we haven't had a discussion of how to allocate that money. I mean,
Because he's not going to allocate his money to actually save people's lives. He's just going to say he is. All right? All I'm going to say is this, because I don't want to get thrown off the platform, okay? But the guy has praised Australia's response, which is completely authoritarian, over the top, along with facial recognition apps. Praised it. Loves it, loves it, loves it, okay? And when you see this, I was warned about it. We might play this after the video, but this is what's going on. More Americans died of what this year than all of 2020? Just let that sink in. So then how are we saving lives again? So once again, I'm going to say it. Shade the Motion Picture threw some shade at Bill Gates. Big time. Big time. Now, this is more than just the Gates section, but it's a large section of the film, and it's time that we go to it.
Profiteering, greed, are these some of the motives? Some might say so.
Since the 1990s, people have been able to bet on the weather. Now, climate means overall worldwide weather due to the jet streams, due to different influencing factors. Weather, on the other hand, is a local event. Weather modification programs are initiated by utilities, cities, counties, states, private individuals. Anyone can modify the weather, just like when Hurricane Sandy came about. People know there's going to be damage in a certain area, and they can bet on that damage, and they can make millions. It's a $1 billion worldwide industry, so that right now I could hire a weather modification company if I had the money and the inclination. I could have them enhance snow in some area of the United States, and when I did that, the weather modification company and myself could bet that there would be increased snow in that area during the time of our program, and thus I would make money.
By the way, Bill Gates now, on public record, is a funder into geoengineering programs. He is also a heavy investor in Monsanto.
There is a line...
Now, even before I let him speak here on Monsanto, because you're about to hear Gates, he is now, because again, this film came out in 2013, he is now the largest farm owner in the country. Monsanto. Remember Monsanto and Bayer got together? Remember Bayer also were the ones injecting people with live HIV virus? He keeps great company. Jeffrey Epstein, Monsanto.
Of research on what's called geoengineering, which are various techniques that would delay the heating to buy us 20 or 30 years to get our act together.
Bill Gates of Microsoft has been funding cloud whitening experiments using salt particles to see clouds, to brighten them so that it would reflect more direct sunlight back to outer space. The Earth would receive less direct sunlight. But is he consulting with us when those clouds, water rains out and the particulates are salt? Is he responsible then when our rivers and our streams are salted up because of this endeavor to have these type of particulates in our cloud for cloud seeding and cloud whitening purposes?
What may surprise you as well is that Bill Gates actually owns 500,000 shares of biotech corporation Monsanto, the 90+% owner of genetically modified seeds in the United States market.
He benefits on the back end through his investment on Monsanto. It's the Hegelian dialectic problem reaction solution. Monsanto comes in and they have patented a seed that addresses abiotic stress, and it's a seed that covers everything from apples to zucchini.
When I moved out here, shortly afterwards I put in some irrigation with a friend, and I started growing some watermelons, and they grew effortlessly. Just put the seeds right in the soil, the native soil, and they just grew prolifically all over the place. We had probably 25, 30 watermelons for about 3 years. And about 4 or 5 years ago, it just stopped. That was it. No more watermelon. Tomatoes wouldn't grow. I'm pretty sure the soil has some problems. Sorry, can't grow watermelons anymore. Can't grow artichokes no more. Your chicken's feathers are coming out.
When most people think of Bill Gates, they think of Microsoft, they think of Windows, they think of the Xbox. They think of a man who has pioneered technology into our living rooms. However, there's yet another side to Bill Gates.
Bill Gates never get into politics, never talk about politics, nothing. He was just in the field of computer. But suddenly something happened that the Congress threatened to break down Microsoft in several pieces. Oh, Bill Gates, the richest man in the United States, was not a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, but he saw the writing on the wall, and then he joined the Council on Foreign Relations, and just then the Congress said, well, we are not going to break down Microsoft.
Bill Gates wields great power through his investments. In the realm of entertainment, you have Comcast, the Xbox, and the Windows Phone. In energy and technology, you have ExxonMobil, Ecolab, Devon Energy, and Cabot Oil and Gas. In banking, you have Goldman Sachs, M&T Bank, and Berkshire Hathaway. And in the field of food, you have McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Diamond Foods, Walmart, and even Monsanto. Just want to say, hey, the Windows Phone failed. At least we got that one from them, huh, guys? Hey, the Windows Phone failed. Not seeing much else up there that was a big loser over the last decade. Just want to point that out, guys. I'm sure you got a good tax break at the end of that division as well. Who knows?
One of the ways that's been suggested to fund these schemes is through a carbon tax. This carbon tax means that anybody releasing CO2 would have to pay or purchase credits in order to keep releasing CO2, and that the funding mechanism would then go toward the deficit or go toward various things that would apparently or supposedly save us from climate change and global warming.
I'm going to talk today about energy and climate. And that might seem a bit surprising because my full-time work at the foundation is mostly about vaccines and seeds. We need to meet a new constraint, and that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. I asked the top scientists on this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. We do need the market incentives, CO2 tax, cap and trade, something that gets that price signal out there.
Well, this is a problem because no one is talking about how these funds are to be spent, who gets the money that is collected. The carbon tax levied against people who emit CO2 would be against agriculture, energy companies, different type of people that provide power and energy or food for us. And they won't pay the costs. They're going to transfer the costs to us in the form of higher energy. They're going to transfer the cost to us in the form of a tax on us, all the people of the United States, if this is passed. Nobody is discussing the solutions. Everyone is discussing what the funding mechanism will be for various solutions which may not change the climate at all or damage the environment we live in. And so this scheme that is going on, whether it's cap and trade, or whether it's a carbon tax, is merely a charade. And it doesn't offer any solutions to the weather events that we're seeing, nor does it address the ongoing weather modification programs, which NOAA lists in their documents.
It's government control of everything in our lives. Everything from the cereal you eat, everything to the air you breathe, how many times you flush your toilet. It's everything. And that's what they're trying to do, is micromanage how we live, who lives, where we live, what we eat, what we breathe, what we drink.
At one of the speeches that Bill Gates gave during the TED conference, he put a rather alarming equation up on the board. Essentially, this equation called for massive population control, without actually saying it. You see, carbon dioxide was part of the equation, and people were part of the equation.
So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
And let's just stop right there. Before I explain the math problem that he just put up there, the part they were trying to fact check was the vaccines part, but they admit it. So once again, he's like, well, we can maybe lower that by about 10, 15%. Interesting. So that was, again, let's show it to you. Let's show you the big fact. They're fact checking. They're fact check-ins. I mean, this is the TED Talk. But what's even more alarming is that equation that involved people and energy per person. This was a multiplication equation. Now, anybody who's taken first grade math knows that 1 times 0 equals 0. 100 times 0 equals 0. So Bill Gates advocating getting one of these numbers down to 0 essentially calls for our deaths. Well, you can only have 0 carbon emissions if there's no life on the planet. It's an impossibility. Yet the ignorant people in the audience of Gates are cheering, applauding, clapping, and really have no idea what they're taking part in.
Ultimately, what the powers that be are looking for, what the eugenicists are looking for, are two separate species, a worker class and a ruling class. The working class gets fed the GMO. The working class breathes the terrible air. They drink the polluted water.
They used to call it the haves and the have-nots. It's going to become where your genes are literally going to tell them who you are and how much you're worth.
Warren Buffett, who has been described by the mainstream media as the most successful investor in history, is yet another one of these eugenicists that attends meetings on population control. Portrayed in the media as nothing more than a billionaire, an investor, somebody to be endeared, to look up to, somebody holding an ice cream cone or cavorting with Bill Gates. However, Mr. Buffett is instrumental in many of the things that take place in the United States and around the world. Warren Buffett is invested in both sides of the coin in many of his dealings. Here's just a small example of some of the things that Warren Buffett is actually invested in. From Lowe's to Home Depot to Visa to MasterCard to Comcast and beyond. Warren Buffett was one of the attendees to this meeting on population control that included Michael Bloomberg, David Rockefeller, Bill Gates, and even Oprah Winfrey.
Behind closed doors on this New York campus, a secret gathering of some of the world's most powerful people. Gates, Buffett, Bloomberg, Winfrey. It was like the Super Friends.
In the great hall of the Justice League, there are assembled the world's 4 greatest heroes.
Together with others at the meeting, including George Soros, Ted Turner, David Rockefeller, they're worth more than $125 billion. The new Supermen and Wonder Woman, the super rich friends, not fighting bad guys, but fighting for good nonetheless.
The oligarchy is not convinced by findings or statistics or a survey of the world. that the world is overpopulated. The oligarchy has to believe that the world is overpopulated simply because they are oligarchs. In other words, it's a structural feature of being an oligarch. In the case of Greek antiquity, we have a very clear example of the connection between oligarchy and genocide based on the notion of overpopulation. We find that the Greek oligarchy, which speaks to some degree to us through Hesiod, was of the opinion that the Greek world and the Mediterranean world was overpopulated in 1000 BC. This is an astounding finding. 3,000 years ago, the oligarchy thought that there were too many people in Greece, too many people in Asia Minor, Anatolia, too many people in the Greek islands, too many people in the Eastern Mediterranean, Egypt, and so forth.
Your confrontation with Ted Turner on the subject of basically eugenics and the fact that he's the head of the United Nations Foundation and has called for a massive population reduction.
Well, one of our members, Gary, actually acted like he was for population control.
Mr. Turner, I was wondering if you think it's a good idea to reduce 90% of the population because we are being overpopulated by a lot of... 90%. 80? Prince Philip said 80, sir. I go with 85.
I think 2 billion is about right.
Right, me too. Thank you. Exactly. One-child policy.
We're now at 7 billion, which means getting rid of 5 billion people. And he called for a one-child policy for the next 100 years. So it's pretty scary and pretty ridiculous that he's actually calling for such inhumane eugenics operations when he is actually the U.S. largest landowner and actually has 5 kids himself. And that's what we asked him. How can you call for a world population reduction when you are the biggest landowner in America and have 5 kids? And he really didn't like that. And
I said in 1996, you were quoted as saying that the world should be reduced by 95% ideally.
World population?
World population, correct.
For that, I believe in stabilizing the population, but I might have said that. I don't know. 96 was a long time ago.
Yes, it was, sir. But you are the nation's largest private landowner. So wouldn't that be a contradiction?
Acres are concerned, not value. A lot of desert in there.
Yeah, but if the world is too populated, and you are the U.S.'s largest landowner, isn't that a contradiction to want the world to be depopulated by 95%?
No, because I have about 50,000 bison on that land. I bought it so we could bring back the bison. They were at the verge of extinction.
But sir, what's more important, the human race or the human race or bison?
The oldest oligarchical trick in the book is to try to blur the line between humans and beasts, humans and animals. And one of the favorite themes of oligarchical sculptures and things like this is to have creatures that are part human, part animal. The overpopulation seems to grow out of the quest of the oligarch to find a way to define other people as subhuman or non-human. The oligarch attempts to say that the common run of mankind, the average person, Joe Sixpack, is really an animal. But the oligarch, the people of wealth and family and whatever other criteria that they may want to drag out, these are inherently superior.
At the basis of it all is this colossal increase in the human population. It's one of the living species of the planet, but it's reaching plague proportions.
So that the answer to the problem that this creates tends to be the extermination of the poor, the useless eaters, the lower classes, the inferior racial minorities, of course, always a favorite target, an obvious target.
The problem isn't overpopulation. The problem is the population is being poisoned.
GMOs were introduced into the food supply several decades ago.
We're gonna end it right there. You want to see the rest? You know where it is. Here's the deal, guys. They're all free. I gave them around. We were trying to warn you about this stuff well over a decade ago. I think this film does an excellent job. I think it'd be a great companion piece if you want to see the history outside of what's going on. If you get somebody watch COVID Land, how could this happen? It's a great building block for that. Invisible Empire is a great building block for that. Learning about 9/11 via Fabled Enemies and Loose Change Final Cut, great building blocks for that. this Sunday, come on down for free. Quad Cities, Iowa, Davenport, Front Street Brewery. Free food, free refreshments, great speakers like myself, Derek Brose, Pat Militich, Miriam Gomez, Ramiro Romani, and many others, locally speaking. My friend Todd is going to be emceeing it. My nieces are going to be helping me grill. It's going to be a good time, a party for all. Some music at the end. Come on down and visit us for free. You want to support this program? You want to know how to do it? It's down below right now. Many ways, but really Rockfin. And then if you hit up the GoFundMe, we are trying to get that building. Believe me, it's on my mind all the time. Expansion. Couldn't do it without you guys. I love you, and I'll see you on the flip side.